I've been asked a number of times if I talk about Ruger number ones and or perhaps other single shot rifles do with accuracy in comparison to bolt action rifles. My first experience with Ruger number ones was in 1968. Bill Ruger had sent my friend Les Bowman a couple of Ruger number ones to test and write up about. Well, it didn't go very far. First place, if you look at this, look at a number one. This is a number one that I've built a beautiful stock for. If you look at this, the screw in the forend here, this goes in at a 45-degree angle backwards. You tighten this up against the forearm hanger. This area right through here acts as a fulcrum. And Ruger designed this way, which is absolutely crazy. And the Ruger number one rifles coming out of the factory had about 150 pounds of pressure against the barrel up here on the forend when you tighten this down. Now, if anybody at all has any clue whatsoever to do with accuracy, you know that that doesn't work. You can't have this sort of situation, a strain on the barrel. First thing that goes on is that the first shot is, let's say it's on zero on the paper. Once you got your rifle zeroed, your next shot's going to walk up on the paper, and the next shot's going to walk up higher on the paper because of this tremendous amount of pressure on the barrel by the forend. Well, Les wouldn't write up anything on the Ruger number ones because of it. And basically things kind of deteriorated there to do with writing anything about the Ruger number ones. With no cooperation, Bill Ruger. Anyway, just a few years later, I got my hands on a number one of my own. And I took the forearm off and I studied it a bit. The forearm is attached to a hanger that extends out from the action roughly this far, the space of my fingers. Now this hanger has some flex in it. So if you relieve the pressure against the forend, that's not the total solution. The solution is to stiffen the forearm hanger so that it can't flex. There's only one way to take care of this. I simply use a carbide drill and I drill the forearm hanger for an 832 screw. That 832 screw, 840 rather screw, goes through the forearm hanger and is tightened somewhat. The end of the screw is rounded, smooth and rounded. It goes and contacts the barrel and eliminates any flex at all in the forend, because now it's got a stiffening point where it can't flex, it can't move, it can't go up against the barrel, it can't flex. And so by adjusting that, you can get this amount of clearance out here on the forend to keep from having any pressure out here on the forend, along with, just like any other accuracy rifle, it can be bedded here in the back end and can be bedded onto the hanger. But from there on out, the barrel needs to be floated. Now this happens to be a 25-06. I built this around 43 years ago. It has a Schillen Select Match stainless barrel, and this rifle is extremely accurate. I've worked up loads, a couple of bullets, many years ago, and this rifle will consistently shoot somewhere around 7/16 to ½ inch. And it has for 43 years. It still does. I haven't shot the rifle to burn the throat out. This has been a lot of times my go-to antelope rifle. Maybe an occasional deer, or perhaps something else, maybe a coyote while I'm antelope hunting and so forth. But anyway, there's little gimmick things that are sold to put on that forearm hanger. To be honest with you, it's nothing but a mess. My method is very straightforward and very simple, and this takes care of the problem. Now, if you've got a rifle that'll shoot those kind of groups, and it's been shooting those kind of groups for 40 some odd years, it works, doesn't it? So the answer is, I feel that this rifle and the way that I build Ruger number ones, and I've built several hundred Ruger number ones over the years, you know, for various people. I have several others, and anyway, I understood right from the very get-go, many years ago, that something had to be done, which of course I said, I've said what I've done. The other aspect is here, looking at this rifle, you probably notice that it doesn't have Ruger rings on it. Well, the Ruger quarter rib ring base, the slots in it are positioned in the wrong place to be able to mount a scope so you can get it back where you've got the proper distance from your eye when you mount the rifle. Look at the position of this scope. Look at the position of the scope in relationship to the tang. The eyepiece is even with the end of the tang, the top tang on the receiver. These bases are basically mounted, you know, the same hole spacing and so forth as Ruger number one from the factory, but these bases are made offset. These happen to be, you know, projectionless type scope rings made at that time by Control from Texas, and I've used a considerable number of those rings over the years to build rifles. But anyway, that's what I've got to say to some extent about a number one. This is a reasonably heavier rifle. This has got a number four weight barrel. It's 27.5 inches long, and with 120 grain bullets, 120 grain nozzlers, I am able to obtain 3,400 feet a second. The standard 25-06 throated, so that the bullets are seated just simply the length of the neck. Nothing below, not down into the powder capacity. So, you see, there are ways to obtain performance. And I did this, you know, 40 some odd years ago. Now we have things that are coming out and you think that they've reinvented the wheel. Well, folks like myself that understand how that you get accuracy, how you get velocity, and what you have to do to get it, I've understood this almost from the very get-go, that you can't seat the bullet way down in the powder capacity and expect to get the type of performance. So, yeah, I'm going to have somebody, some naysayer, that isn't going to want to believe that I get 3,400 feet a second. I've got a 27.5-inch barrel. It isn't a 24-inch barrel. And I use the proper powder to be able to obtain that kind of velocity. And anyway, I've talked repeatedly on performance and loading. This is just one of the situations here. You see, I talk about the stock. This is a beautiful piece of fiddleback maple. It's point pattern checkered. Has a rosewood 4-in tip and grip cap. Built to my liking. You know, a nice generous cheek piece. This rifle fits me very, very well. I'm not going to come out and say that, you know, that we're going to win the bench rest matches with these single shot rifles. I'm talking about simply hunting rifles with top accuracy. Something that'll shoot sub half minute of angle, and this does it. And it does it without any trouble whatsoever. So this is what I've got to say about the number 1. Now I'm going to talk about another single shot. This is something that I was involved with really many years ago. In 1969, the summer of 1969. There were some men in the Salt Lake area, one of the men including P.O. Ackley, along with 3 other individuals, that basically founded the Sharp's Arms Company. They were redesigning the Sharp-Borchardt single shot action for modern use. This is what this is a redesigned Sharp-Borchardt action. Now, Les Bowman moved here from Cody, Wyoming, Utah to help with that project. And prior to that, in the latter part of June or so of 1969, one of the fellows from Sharp's Arms was to come into Cody. Les Bowman and I picked him up at the airport, and he had 4 Sharp-Borchardt redesigned Sharp's Arms rifles, complete rifles, scope ready to go with ammunition. He came over for the purpose to have these rifles evaluated by Les. Les was a very close friend of P.O. Ackley, and I was asked to be involved in the situation. I was to do all the shooting and the testing, and Les would do the photograph work at the rifle range and write up the article. So, in 1969, I got involved with this project, and right off the bat, I liked the newly designed Sharp's action. Not long after this man from Sharp's, who I can't remember his exact name except his first name was Mike. Anyway, they came up with the idea that they would like to have Les Bowman over in Utah to be involved with the project. And it was only a month or so later, I moved from Cody, Wyoming to Trinidad, Colorado to go to gunsmithing school. Well, in that aspects of things, it wasn't long after Les went down to Salt Lake area, Bountiful specifically, that Colt struck up a deal and bought Sharp's Arms, and they moved everything to Connecticut. And Les Bowman spent about 11 months back in that country, and he did all the testing at a stand-up shooting bench, which is very, very handy, I might say, by the way, rather than a sit-down shooting bench. He did all the testing at the Lyman gun site shooting range for Colt. And there was a point, you know, when they were beginning to perhaps go into some production, that I was inquired about perhaps going east to be involved with the project as the overseer of building the rifles. And I refused it emphatically. I would have never left my home country in this part of the world to go to the east. But anyway, this is an action actually made at Colt for the project. And I have been lucky to have my hands on a number of these actions and or rifles that were involved in some of the early testing and project. This is a rifle that I built. I built this from scratch with a rough action and made my own scope mounts, fit everything. This rifle has a 30-inch barrel. This is a 7x300 Weatherby. And this piece of wood, is Bastogne walnut. And it's a beautiful, beautiful piece of wood with a lot of color and figure in it. I point pattern checker in this, made this specifically for myself. I've never hunted with the rifle whatsoever. I've worked up loads, and this rifle will shoot groups right there in the half-inch area very, very consistently with quite a number of different bullets with considerably high velocity. Now, I've built rifles with 26-inch barrels, 27-inch barrels, in 7x300s and my 7mm by 404 Wapiti Express. But I decided that I wanted a single shot with a 30-inch barrel. Well, it gains a bit of velocity and whatnot, and you've got to understand that a 30-inch barreled single shot is roughly the same overall length as about a 25 or 26-inch barrel bolt action gun. You see, even though the barrel is longer, where we come up with the advantage here, the action's a lot shorter than a bolt action. So everything all works out so that we have this sort of situation. Now, I added something to this whole mix of things. There's an extended forearm hanger inside the forend here that I remodeled everything and attached it so that I had something to attach the screw to, and of course it goes straight in. And this barrel is not free floated. This barrel is fully bedded to the forearm and is bedded to that hanger. So what I'm describing here is a method that gives accuracy. It's the same sort of application. You don't obtain accuracy without precision. You can't have something that gives you a tremendous amount of forearm pressure against a barrel like the number one. This doesn't have any forearm pressure. It just simply sets perfectly in the forearm, and it obviously works because the performance on the paper proves that these single-shot rifles, these single-shot falling block type action rifles, are accurate. Properly built, properly barreled, properly gunsmithed, and everything properly fitted and bedded. This is part of the whole aspect. This is what I'm always talking about, that we have to do these things properly or we don't obtain the accuracy that we're looking for. I don't have a bolt action rifle, hunting rifle, that's really any more accurate than this rifle or the number one that I just showed you. All my hunting rifles shoot right down there between about 3/8 and a half inch, maybe just, a skosh more, maybe 550 thousandths or something like that. But anyway, this is very acceptable, longer range rifle accuracy, you know. And I've killed game with the #1. As I said, I've never hunted with this rifle because it's so beautiful. I didn't want to scratch it. But I've hunted considerable with the #1, and I've killed antelope. I've killed antelope with one shot out there in the 650 yard range, you know, with a good rangefinder, and on a fairly still day here in Wyoming. And you know, I've always had kind of an interest in single shots. I have a few other single shots, #1s, and these Sharp's action rifles that I build up and one thing another, and a couple of original, you know, Sharp-Borchardt action rifles that I've had for, you know, over 50 years. And so I'm not new to the single shots because I've been using these single shots since I was about 15 or 16 years old, the Sharp-Borchardts. So this goes back quite a long ways. And anyway, that's kind of the rundown. Except I might mention one thing here. You open this lever. Right there is a roller bearing in each side of the breech block. That's a roller bearing with the Timken roller bearings. This action works just as slick as can be, you see. Very, very slickly. It's got a Timney single set trigger. You can push the trigger forward, pull the trigger. But anyway, that's kind of the rundown on single shots.